In this video, I'm going to discuss the override settings whenever you're embedding a component inside, say, a tabbed UI or a UX component. So in this case, we have a tabbed UI with various schedulers all on different pages within that tabbed UI. If we look at it real quick here, we can see we have a few different schedulers running inside this tabbed UI. Now, inside, whenever you're embedding one of these objects, either in a UX when you embed it or whenever you call it, like from a tabbed UI from a component, you have this override settings choice down in your definition, which is located inside the argument binding section of the component. So if we go down here, we'll see this is our normal argument binding section where we can bind our arguments. But there's also a override settings area. And when we check this override settings, you'll see I have a couple of overrides in here. And you'll also see if I click this button, show existing settings, it's going to give you a list of everything that's been defined in that component. And basically, you have access to all this information, and you can change most of it or a good bit of it by using the override settings. In this particular example, what I'm doing is I'm going to override the skin, which is the CSS that's being applied to the scheduler, and I'm going to override it from what it's being initially set at to what I'm going to have inside the session variable called ACDS style, underbar style. And we're going to see this in action here. We're going to go back to this is the actual component that I'm opening, and if we look at it in live preview, we'll see that it's set up to use this particular skin, which happens to be the flat skin. But when we look at it in the tabbed UI, if I go to my server side events, and right here I'm just setting a session variable, and I'm going to change it to glossy, from flat to glossy. So I'm setting the session variable to a new value, and then in the control itself, in the override settings, is where I'm going to set it to that equal to session variable. I could have used a static value here like I'm doing in the must run an iframe, but in this case we are using a session variable. And then when we watch this in live preview, this 14-day view is now in a different style. And if I go back to my server side events and actually change this to the default skin, and again we'll run this in live preview, and we'll see that now the default skin is applied. So that just shows how you can use the override settings with static as well as session variables to give you greater control over what is being done inside the scheduler and access to some of the settings that aren't in the arguments and so forth. Thanks.